And then I saw my position posted and I used that network that I'd already built. And so when I say connection and community, I think it's one of the most important things that we should teach everybody, but all women. Like
Yeah.
keep that. I work with a lot of high school kids and I'm like, listen, keep that number in your phone. You
Yeah.
just don't know, right?
Welcome to Suburban Warrior, the podcast that will impact, inspire, and empower you to transform your mindset and become the badass warrior that you are. I'm your host and fellow warrior, Chrissy Pfeiffer, former clinician and corporate marketing exec turned multi-passionate entrepreneur, performance and life coach, and mom to 4 not-so-little warriors. Each week, I will bring you honest conversations with inspiring guests to share their stories of resilience, optimism, success, and simple yet effective strategies so that you transform your thoughts and change your behavior to get the results you want in your life. You will be empowered to take action, warrior up, and believe in you. Let's do this.
What's up, warriors? Welcome back to another episode of the Suburban Warrior Podcast. I'm your host, Chrissy Pfeiffer, back this week with another amazing suburban warrior here to share her story with you. So my guest this week is Angela Rakis, and she is the founder of Favorite Daughter, a consultancy focused on small and independent organizations in the food, consumer goods, hospitality, nonprofit, and retail sectors. Angela has led a diverse career, starting as an account manager working with advertising agencies in New York City, building a foundation in strategic planning while working on national brands such as Mercedes-Benz, Denny's, and Jaguar cars. She followed her passion for food, enrolling in the French Culinary Institute in New York City, earning her certification in pastry arts. While attending school, she learned the details of small business by working in the best cheesecake shop in New York City, Eileen's Special Cheesecake. Eileen was proof that when you put your heart into what you do, you will succeed, and inspired her to unite her business savvy with her personal passions. Angela joined Whole Foods Market as head of marketing, and this served as a training ground for retail execution, exceptional service, and strong leadership. She established herself as a marketplace strategist and connector in the industry, and recognized for leadership, innovation, creativity, and driving results. She was fortunate to be on the forefront of the organic, natural foods, and local food movement. After 10 years at Whole Foods, she was ready for a new challenge. Intrigued by an opportunity to see the retail business from a fresh perspective, she took a role with Eden's Realty. As vice president of marketing, she represented the company's vast real estate portfolio and served the mission of enriching communities. From nurturing independent businesses to creating engaging experiences for visitors, her team crafted vibrant places to gather and engage. Angela offers a wealth of strategic planning skills and exceptional knowledge in the retail and hospitality space. Her varied professional background ensures a unique and valuable perspective on operations, consumer behavior, consumer trends, and business strategy. Welcome to the podcast, Angela.
Thanks for having me. Wow, I did all that, huh?
Yeah, I know. Isn't it so funny? What's great is I feel like a lot of times when I read my guest bios, I come back and they're like, wow, I really did all that. That's amazing. And yes, it is. We rarely take the time to think about our own past and everything that we've done. So it is really cool. I mean, I'm excited to hear your story. I'm really happy to have you on the podcast because you do have such a wealth of diversity in your background and in your career. So I'm really excited to sort of hear about your path and how that all came about. So let's just dive right into it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, I mean, currently I own a consulting business called Favorite Daughter LLC, and Favorite Daughter is really the best dad joke ever. I'm the only daughter. So my dad thought that was real charming to introduce me that way for years. And,
Cute.
and yeah, and so that's what I do now, really. I love independent and smaller businesses. I've worked with national chains too, but I think there's something special about people who are finding their passion and the thing that they want to put into the world. And they're just a little bit like, should I do it? How do I do it? Why would I do it? And so I really like to help them get clarity on what they're doing the why behind what they're doing and see if we can turn it into something really special. So that's what I do now. The bio definitely got me. I was like, wow, I did do all that. I mean, I think I've always said that I'm not a risk taker. And then when I look back, I'm like, those are some pretty big leaps of faith and leaps of like just trusting myself. So, I mean, I grew up outside of DC in a place called Silver Spring, Maryland. And, I really was ready to go to college and get out of there. My mom still jokes that I chose my college because it was the farthest distance she would let me go, which was 5 hours outside of DC. I mean, that was really the deciding point. Was like, I just want to be, kind of on my own at that point. And so I think that might have started that idea that, okay, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to figure it out. I mean, it was a school, when we went to visit, she said, this is a school for engineers and farmers' children, and you're neither of those. I'm like, I'll figure it out. And so I was at an engineering school studying business. And I think it just really, I've always been a little bit just trying to figure out what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go. I knew what I liked. I didn't really know what the jobs were in that, but I started in communications, and that thread of connection and communication has stayed through my entire career. So even if I've changed industries or focus, there's sort of community connectivity. That's kind of been I think that's been the thing that's kept me sort of connected to what I do, and to people. I mean, when I left Raleigh, North Carolina, I went to New York City straight away, which is a culture shock, a financial shock. It's a lot of, you're just like, whoa, I'm going to do it.
Absolutely.
I thought if you work in advertising, you have to live in New York City. There's no other choice. So I feel like that's another, I look back, it was pretty risky, but at the time I just thought, well, this is what you do. You just go and do it.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it's funny too, like as you look back on your career, because I've done this too, because I've been in different industries and have done different things, that you don't think about it at the time, but when you think about what you're doing, like I love that you can find, like community connection, you can find all the commonalities that are within your career and what you've done. I don't think we realize it at the time, like in our 20s and 30s when we're going through it. You just sort of are going towards what you feel pulled toward, which is great and amazing. Yeah. But it's easy. It's nice to look back and see the commonalities that you have, because I think, sometimes, like a lot of times with my coaching, like I focus on things like that, like what are your values? What are you passionate about? What is the things that raise your energy? And I think when you can find those things that fuel you, then you can really make the next step into a different career, a new passion, a new hobby, if, whatever it may be. So I love that you found that like community and connection and those values that, really are important to you that you found throughout your career, because you went from working in an advertising agency, which, as we all know, is, high pressure, high marketing, New York City, the whole, on the go, East Coast vibe. But then, to learning how to be a pastry chef at the French Culinary Institute, which is a very big shift. How was that shift for you?
Yeah, it was interesting because I think, and we're probably of that same era of like, it's a corporate ladder. We're going to go up, 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 right?
Exactly. 100%.
So at the ad agency, which I loved, and being young in an ad agency, it's like awesome. I've got great friends.
So fun.
Time. But I essentially got laid off. My account went to another agency, and the options were you can go with the account. At that time, they were like, yeah, we like you well enough. You can come with us, or, you just basically lose your job. And so I was like, I don't know. This is so high pressure, so cutthroat. What should I do? And one of my friends who I've known since high school said, you're always cooking and always baking. You should go to cooking school. And I was like, I don't think that's a job. Is that a thing people do? Meanwhile, it was like the heyday of Food Network and all this stuff. She's like, I think you do. She's like, especially in New York. And so my thinking was, and I had a friend who actually did it, and I hadn't realized that it was the same path. And she was a pastry chef. And she's like, well, let me take you on a tour of the school. And as we were talking, like, what's the worst that happens? Like, I mean, obviously, I'll take another student loan out. I had just paid my loan. Okay. Right. But it was like, I'll have this skill. It's a 6-month program. I'll bust my butt, and let's just see. And so it was I worked from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. I went to school 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then I worked in a bakery at night, like, because I was living in New York. I was making decent money.
Yeah.
I had roommates, of course. It was the whole thing. But I I needed to pay rent. And so I was working in 2 bakeries. I was really hustling it. And I was like, oh man, I like it. I realized I didn't want to be like in a like restaurant kitchen, like that kind of heat. I definitely couldn't handle. I mean, I did some internships and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
externships. The bakery was great. I loved it. I loved learning there. But I was like, there's something, it just wasn't quite right. I'm like, I'm not fast enough in the kitchen to be like, let's whip up some cupcake. I'm
Right.
good, but I wasn't that good. So I parlayed that into the position at Whole Foods. I saw a job post. First, I went to the career center at the culinary school and I was like, listen, I want to work for Martha Stewart or I want to work at Whole Foods. And they were like, okay, Martha Stewart, like that's a tough one. So let's see what we can do with Whole Foods. I just kind of put in a resume. And then I saw my position posted and I used that network that I had already built. And so when I say connection and community, I think it's one of the most important things that we should teach everybody, but all women. Like
Yeah.
keep that. I work with a lot of high school kids and I'm like, listen, keep that number in your phone. You
Yeah.
just don't know, right? So I
Love
had
it.
a friend that I knew from culinary school, and I sent her a note and I said, "Hey, this position sounds perfect for me. It was called marketing coordinator, director, something like that." And she said, "Actually, that would be my boss." And I was like, "Oh, how convenient would that be?" And so
Wow.
I said, "I'm going to send you a new resume." I redid my resume. I sent it to her, and I was like, "This is going to be perfect if I could get this job because it's my love of food, and it's my love and knowledge on business. If I could marry those two, how great would that be?" And so that's how
Yeah.
it kind of came about. But I used that network. I actually was just texting with that person before this podcast. Shout out to Heather because she was like, let me see what I can do. And Whole Foods was really, at the time, I don't know how they do it now, but you interviewed in a panel. So it's your peers, it's people that would report to you and people that are senior to you. So, I walked into a place that had like, I want to say 15 people in the room, 15
Wow.
on a video before we had Zoom and all that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, these people are insane.
Yeah.
And so I got hired 1 month before they opened the big Columbus Circle, New York City Whole Foods, which put Whole Foods really on the map in terms of a large brand. It had been like a small,
Okay.
unknown business at that time.
Yeah. And look at it now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm sure the 10 years that I think you were there,
Yeah.
it says, the 10
Mhm.
years that you were there, I'm sure the marketing for that was really fun because Whole Foods grew so significantly.
Yeah, we opened, I think I have it somewhere stashed in my resume. I think I opened a total in 10 years of like 30 Whole Foods stores
Wow.
in 2 regions, something like that. I mean, it was crazy. And it was still, the high pressure, like I had tried to get away from,
Right. Right.
advertising, but it was a different kind because I so believed in the mission and the purpose and what we were doing. I mean, I look back now and I'm like, okay, I probably drank a little too much of the Kool-Aid. That's okay. But I really loved it. And I thought it was really like the perfect spot for me to
Yeah.
help grow this company, use the skills I have, and then learn some new things along the way. And they're really the kind of place that was like very entrepreneurial. If you had an idea, it was like, I got this idea. I have no idea if it'll work. And it was like, well, does it meet the core values of the company? It does. Okay, well, let's try it. Let's
Love
try
it.
to lose too much money in the process. Let's see
Yeah.
what we can do. And so, that's kind of how that part of the path went. So.
Okay. And then, so from Whole Foods, here you are having a successful career, loving it, merging two of your passions, but then you decide to leave and then go to a realty company, which again, big industry change,
Mhm.
a new path. And again, I do love this career. I love how it's not a ladder, but it's more of a zigzag
Mhm.
because I think it just shows that you can find success and enjoy what you do, even when you're not just climbing up one ladder, right? Different
Yeah.
industries, different positions, learning about new things, really trying new things, putting yourself in a place where you can really grow.
Yeah.
So tell us about that transition for you.
Yeah. Well, so I left New York and came back to DC with Whole Foods. I had one of the regional presidents kind of lured me back with like, isn't your family here? And what you liked? And I never thought I'd leave New York. I mean, once you're in New York City, it's like, well, this is the best.
Right.
But I was like, okay, that might be something. And I needed something new. I'd been there long enough I couldn't really do much more in that particular region. So I came to the DC region. And honestly, I got a new boss. I don't, he didn't really love me that much. And I think this is where we also like the tips for women in business is like we get so identified with our role that like I was known as the person from Whole Foods. I've been gone from Whole Foods for as long as I was there, and people
Yeah.
still ask me Whole Foods questions. Like that was a lot of my identity.
Yeah.
And so essentially I lost my job there and I went to Eden's, and I had met the CEO of Eden's because again, like, when you're introduced to somebody or the universe puts you in the place,
Mm-hmm.
you just kind of have to sort of be present with it. And so I had moved from New York to DC. I went to this fundraising dinner that we did, that Whole Foods was a sponsor, sat next to this woman, and she was asking me about myself. And I was like, I moved here from New York. There's no good food in DC. I don't know what's going on here. And I was being a real New York snob, but
Yeah.
we connected. And she's like, I said, well, they're opening this food hall thing. Seems like it'll be really cool, which is called Union Market and is now kind of beloved in DC. And she's like, oh, that's my company. I'm the CEO of the real estate company. And I was like, oh.
Ah.
And she said, oh, and she started naming every boss that I had at Whole Foods. I was like, oh, shoot, this is a very important person. So I'm texting my old boss. I'm like, hey, do you know so-and-so? And she said, that's our landlord in a whole bunch of locations. So you be nice to her. And I was like, okay, got it. And so we joked that I was doing a background check on her while she was trying to figure out who
So
I
funny.
was.
Such a small world, right? How
Such a
all of
small
these
world.
worlds. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at that time, the development that they were doing was pretty empty, and I needed a place to do a big training for Whole Foods team members. And so I just messaged her and said, hey, we're looking just for a space. We'll bring our own food. We just need just a place. We don't have enough room at Whole Foods. And she was like, yeah, absolutely. But it was a great opportunity for her, for Whole Foods to see what kind of development Eden's was doing. So we just had struck up kind of a business friendship. And so when I was looking for something new, I said, this is what I'm doing. And she said, I could use some of the skills that you have at Eden's. I didn't really love the real estate part of it. I liked working with, again, the small businesses that were coming into each of our developments and shopping centers. I loved that. I love like they were opening next to maybe a Williams-Sonoma or Target. And it's like, okay, how can we make this a real community, a real success for the smaller business that's coming in, while also, the larger chains are there to kind of help everybody along. So I kind of like that little puzzle. But the real estate part was like, ooh, this is a lot. And I'm not sure that it fit my energy or my even my skill set. And I think that's another, maybe that's point 3 is to kind of know what your skills are.
Yeah.
And even if you kind of can do it, do you really like doing it?
Right.
Are you enjoying it? I stayed there, I think 3 or 4 years, I think. So I learned a lot, and I think I offered a lot to the company. I just felt like at that time, it just wasn't really what I wanted to be doing. And I had a lot of people coming to me again, like, I've got this product, I've got this small brand, I could use your help.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided, okay, maybe I could start my own business, which was super scary. But I was like, oh.
Yeah, that is super scary. So let's talk about that because leaving the corporate world or leaving a job where, you have your salary and your benefits and, money coming in, it can be really scary. I know I did it back because it's been 14 years, but since I've done it, I have a lot of people when I left the corporate world to start my coaching business.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a lot of people that I coach now still that are, looking to sort of leave the comfort of a salary and start something on their own, entrepreneurial. And it's really scary, So tell us what that was like for you.
Yeah, it was super scary. And I had a very first client who is still somebody who we're really good friends now. And she kind of comes in and out of like needing my help, which I love. And it was very much a Whole Foods connection, right? She had a product at Whole Foods. It wasn't really growing. And just needed some help navigating what was next. And so she had said something to me at one point, something that I don't remember how she worded it, but she said something like, you have the sort of entrepreneurial bug or spirit, don't you? And I was like, oh, I don't really want to have it. Like, I like having a paycheck. I like having my benefits. But it just was too much of a pull. So I just was like, you know what? I had a financial planner. I'm like, bud, this is what I'm doing. And he's like, you know what? I would put my money on you. And I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. And
oh, that's nice.
you need a little bit of like a community around you, not like not like people like building you up, like you're the best, because that's kind of phony. But
Right.
people who are like, here's what I think would be great for you, or here's where I see this happen. Like people who are really real with you. Like if you
Yeah.
have that little group around you, I think you can really find the path. And so I jumped in head first and I, just started doing it. And it's actually funny about the favorite daughter name of my business. I really was making that an LLC behind the scenes. I hadn't come up with my name yet. It was probably going to be Angela Rakis Consulting or something.
Yeah.
But I changed it on LinkedIn, not realizing LinkedIn would like notify everybody. And people
Right.
started commenting. And I was like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
yikes. But I took that as an opportunity. So anybody that messaged me or commented, I sent them a note and said, hey, I'm starting a consulting business. This is what I'm doing. If you have any ideas for me, let me know. So again, like that network really helped me because I was just like, well, that was a dumb knuckleheaded mistake.
Sometimes the best things happen from our mistakes,
From our
right?
mistakes. So I
Yeah.
just said, okay, let me just do this. And that's kind of how I began. And there's, looking back on all of that, which is not even in my bio at this point, but I took on some clients that probably weren't a right fit. I took on some that I was like so desperate I have to have clients because I've got to make money that it just wasn't right. And now I've realized that like I get to choose, I get to decide, and it's up to me who I work with, how I work with them. It's still hard. There's still months where I'm just like, ooh, that was really rough,
Yeah,
but
of course.
I try to really focus on the people that I'm excited about. I mean, I've got some real tiny clients that their idea may or may not become a good business,
Right.
but if they don't get it out of their system, they're
Yeah.
never gonna feel good about it.
Yeah, you never know if you don't try, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so in working with a lot of small business owners or entrepreneurs or people that have good ideas and don't know what the next step is, and what do you think is like sort of one core piece of advice that you could give to people that might be listening that are thinking about starting a business or have a small business and are looking to grow it, but are maybe frustrated and feel stuck? What is like a piece of advice that you could give them?
I would say reach out to your people. And
Okay.
it may not be your family, it may not be your
Right.
friends,
It
right?
usually isn't.
Usually isn't. Yeah,
Right.
I have a friend that has a Greek bakery, and my family's Greek, and we always joke. She's like, the Greeks aren't really my best customers because they're comparing to what their grandmother made, and so we
Yeah,
always sort of joke
exactly.
that, like, But I'd say reaching out to people that you trust their advice, that you maybe you admire them, maybe you feel like they've got a solid understanding of what's going on, which they probably also have those insecurities and fears, and they'll tell you about
Yeah.
them. But I think finding that network, and whether it's a professional network, people in your industry, just finding a few, it doesn't need to be a lot, but tell them what you want to do. And I think that a lot of the fear that I have from some of my clients is that they're afraid to tell people this is what I'm doing. I
Yeah.
used to say, oh,
Totally.
until I get a real job. And I was like, this is my job. This is my company. I own a company. This is what I do. You know,
Yeah.
it's so scary because it's all you, right? So I
Right.
tell people what you're doing, tell them what you want to do, and then find those key kind of advisors or groups of people that can I have two other business colleagues, and we are friends, but we also own our own businesses. We call it Special Circle. And once a month we like get on the
Yeah.
phone or we meet up in real life, and it's like, all right, what's your deal this month? Like, what do you need help with? And we each help each other because you can't go it alone. You weren't meant to go it alone, and so you might as well get the help that where you can. And if you've built that network, people are going to be so happy to share what they know.
Yeah.
They might, I think the fear is like, oh, they're going to kind of ridicule me or make fun of me or tell me it's not going to work. That's okay. They
Yeah.
might not. Who
Of
knows?
course. And I love that. I love that piece of advice. Tell people what you do or what you're doing or what you're going to do, because I do believe so firmly that when you speak it out into the universe, that's all of a sudden it starts to plant the seed in your brain that it's actually happening. And
Yes.
little by little by little, it actually happens because you are more likely to take action. Once you speak it out, it literally does become real. But I agree with you. I think that that's something that a lot of people struggle with, or they demean it like, oh,
Yeah.
well, like I'm just doing this little thing on the side, or I don't really know what I'm doing, or, as opposed to, really speaking about it passionately. And this is
Mhm.
what I'm working on. I'm excited about it and I'm going to grow it. So I think that's a really great and core piece of advice is to as you speak it, so it shall be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is. And it's like the more you talk about it, the more excited you get about it.
Yep.
Sometimes when I've had clients that I know aren't really aligned, I'm like, oh, I'm doing this thing. But when I have a client that, even if they're not making any money, which is probably, the MBAs are going to get upset and send us emails, but I'm so excited about it and they're so excited. It's like that is going to propel it into something.
Yeah.
I never go into something with my clients who are like, I want to, make $1 million. I'm like, awesome.
Yeah.
Same. Like, what
Yeah.
are you doing? But like, what's the thing that's so exciting about this?
Right.
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 So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's, once we start talking about it and it becomes real. I mean, some of the fears of some of my clients, like I'm like, okay, let's just literally get an email list together of people. You're just going to tell them what you're doing. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to tell these people. Like,
Yeah.
all right, well, we're going to have to tell them at some point that you're doing it,
I
right?
love that. That's such a great strategy because again, what you don't realize too is that the more you speak to it, the more you tell people, that's when your network really comes in because you never know by telling somebody what it is that you're doing, what is going to come from that conversation. Oh, I know somebody who blah, 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 and they blah, 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 and they need some, so it's really amazing sort of the cascade effect that just those simple things have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the small little things I think that kind of build up into something bigger.
Yeah. So that's great. I love that little strategy. So just create an email list and send an email to some of your people and let them know what you're doing. And that is a really scary thing. What's is so funny. I remember this is something so simple, but I'm going to share the story just in case there's other people out there who had similar experiences. I had this idea of suburban warrior in my head for probably at least over a year. And it formed from just, a thought that I had and then what it could be and like what it means to be a suburban warrior and what I really wanted it to be. And I wanted it to be this brand that felt empowering. And so, but I kept it inside for like a year and never shared it because I had my coaching business. And so the first post that I ever did on my Suburban Warrior Instagram that sort of explained what Suburban Warrior was, I remember I clicked post and I literally just broke out into an instant sweat. My heart was pounding. I mean, you thought that I was like running a marathon or doing like standing up, like giving a speech like as the president or something.
Right.
It was such a nothing little action, but I still remember it to this day because it was me for the first time sort of putting out there this idea that I had and sort of what I thought I wanted it to become. And that's a really scary thing for people to do. But once you do it, it feels so good.
Yeah. It's like you had like your body had a total reaction to it. You're like, ah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I had like a legit physical reaction from finally putting out there something that was sort of in my heart and in my head, because again, it's fear. We're just worried about how people are going to respond to it. And when you don't have something fully like 100% baked, you kind of worry like, oh, I can't put it out yet. I can't put it out yet. But then what you realize, I think as an entrepreneur, is like, you're never fully baked. You never know fully what something's going to lead to and where your company is going to go. And there's going to be twists and turns and zigs and zags. And you kind of just have to roll with it as we go. Right.
Yes. Yeah, that is absolutely. I mean, I'm so glad you said that because that's the thing is like, you just don't know. you just don't know. I mean, I had one friend because I kept putting off hitting publish on my website. My website is going to be redone soon, but it's very simple. I needed a place on the internet. I wasn't really looking even for appointments on there. Just like, here's who I am. Here's what I do. And she works at Amazon and she goes, first of all, Amazon gets things done 80% and then we hustle for the last 20. She's like, that's how we do it. She goes, and also you're not Amazon. She's like, 50,000 people aren't showing up to your website tomorrow. She's like, hit publish. I was like, well, that's kind of harsh, but that's what I mean. But you need the friends that are going to be like,
100%.
hit publish. You really think you're going to get, 50,000 people tomorrow? And if there's mistakes, we're going to find them and then we're going to fix them. I'm like, oh,
right,
man. And so that was one of those moments where I was like, God, thank you for saying that. And I just hit publish and I found 3 typos that day. And I was like, whoops, went in, fixed them. Did anybody say Angela's, a knucklehead? Because now I use that word twice now. I don't know why. For not finding these typos. No, not really. And I even think now, sort of post-pandemic, you're kind of sort of the imperfections are actually, I think, welcome in a lot of ways. Like those things that were just like, well, I kind of thought it was going to go this way and it went that way. People understand when we were having Zoom calls with cats walking on, right, on
Yes.
keyboards. Like people started
Yes.
seeing the inside of what is going on. And I feel like that's where we are now. It's like just, your flaws are welcome in a lot of ways as
Yeah,
an
I totally agree with that. I do think that it has changed sort of the work world, career environment, because we are in people's homes. You see, I mean, especially as women, and being able to be a working mom,
Mhm.
and the insight into like working from home, and maybe your kids are at home, especially during the pandemic, but maybe they're at school, but they're in and out, and maybe you have to not join a meeting or change time, you need to drive your kids somewhere. Like, I feel like that's all so much better now, and accepting of the environment that we're in, which
Yeah.
is really great because it gives women the flexibility to realize that, I mean, listen, there's never balance in life, but you can still like do both and not feel bad about, you
Yeah.
know, being
Yeah.
a mom and having a job.
Right. And it may not be balance, it's more like fulfillment, right? It's like,
Yeah.
where's the piece that, even like if you're working on a project, there he is.
Yeah.
If
There
you're
she
working,
is.
if you're working on a project and you're just like, in it, like, for your business, for a client's business, and you're like, oh my gosh, and it's going to be a crazy week and there's a lot going on, then the next week might be lighter, right? It's like the balance never happens right at the same time. So I feel like it's, that's where it's going to be fulfilling. You got to like really, even if you're going to do the corporate job, which is fantastic, and there's a lot of benefits to it, you have to set the boundary for what you want to do. And I'm not saying, we're seeing all these funny videos, right? Of people like, I don't work before this or that. Okay. You don't need to publicize it. You can also just not answer your phone after a certain time of day,
Exactly. Exactly.
not make a federal case out of it. Like that's the thing. One of my coworkers, we tried this at Whole Foods. It absolutely failed. But he was like, well, think about like the time our parents were growing up. There was no email. There was no, your parent might bring work home and do it, but then the next day they bring it back to work. And so he's like, well, what if we say, after 7 p.m., we won't send any outgoing emails as leaders, and if people are sending emails, that's fine, but we're not, because that way our team doesn't feel like, oh my God, my boss is emailing me. And it
Right.
worked for a while, but Whole Foods is open from like 8 in the morning to 10 at night. So stores are emailing. And he's like, okay, let's modify that. But we really tried, and that was a long time ago, just to be like, let people have their evening, let people have
Yeah.
their time of day. And I think that we do have a generation of workers that are going to be better at that than we ever were. I think they're going to know that, you know what, I have stuff I need to do that's outside of this job, and I'm going to go do it. And I think we might have been a little bit at a disadvantage in the era that we went into work, which was like, we got to prove, we got to do, we got to prove, we got to do.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
we're hopefully getting away from that a little bit. At least I
No.
know I am. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would agree. I think times have changed. Times have changed significantly, and definitely for the better when it comes to that, for
Yeah,
sure.
I agree.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So when your clients that come to you,
Mhm.
where do you feel like at what point are they coming to you with like what is their biggest sort of thing in the beginning why they're like, okay, I'm a small business owner, but I need to work with a consultant, and here's why.
Yeah, I'd say most it's this idea of having like, they don't have a sounding board. They don't have people around them that they can really like almost, I actually have a program I call it the second brain. It's like a brain dump. And that first client,
Yeah.
that's what she said to me. She was like, you're like my second brain. She's like, I could text you a laundry list, and then when we have our meeting, I'll be like, okay, let's work through this. So it's a lot of like giving them clarity, like when their brain is so full of
Yeah.
either ideas or stresses or, oh my God, there's so much. It's like, okay, these are the things that are going to move the business forward and help you, whether it's creating efficiency or driving sales or whatever it is. And these things are kind of, they're not going to do you much, or they're vanity things. Like, I need more
Right.
followers on Instagram. It's like, okay, yes. And it's probably not going to sell a whole lot of products for what you have. So I think it's a lot of like, when they're feeling that like sense of like, whew, this is a lot, and I don't have I'm not in a corporation where I have a vice president or a, manager that I can really talk to. I need somebody else that can give me an objective view. So I think that's a lot of it, is really somebody who can see clearly, like they
Yeah.
can see their vision, but they can't see the path. And I can kind of see that there's a path here, and then helping them slow down, like take the baby step. We're not at the finish line. We're not even close to the finish line. We're just taking those little steps. So I think those are usually what people come, that's how they end up
Yeah,
finding me.
Totally makes so much sense. I would think as, it is so important. I think, especially as you're trying to build and you're trying to scale, to have someone else who can almost be like a second brain and who can understand your business, understand what your goals are, and really help you to put steps in place to kind of get there and help really even step back and realize what is important. What do I need to do next? And really, at the end of the day, also encourage and support and empower, because we know we all certainly need that along every aspect of life, but certainly in our careers.
Right. And I always say, like, I'm going to love your business more than you do by the end of it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to be
I
like
love that.
so in it and loving it and being like, oh my God, this is so exciting. And I'm constantly texting clients. If I read an article, I'm like, did you see this? Or, hey, this is a thing. And maybe, post about it and be like, I agree or disagree with what this person said, so I'll see things and I'm just like, oh my God, so-and-so needs to know about this. They might already,
That's
I don't even
awesome.
know, but I get so excited about what they're doing. And it might not even be a thing that I'm into, right? Like it's
Of
not,
course.
right? But I'm just like, hey, this is kind of cool. Your audience and your customers would probably love this. Let's share it or figure out what we can do with it. So I get really excited about what people are doing.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Well, I can certainly tell that you get excited, Angela. I love your energy.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation. I loved hearing about your career path. I loved all of your advice. I love your community and connectivity values because I am similar in my values to that as well. So thank you so much for sharing with me and all of my listeners. It was really awesome to have you on.
Thank you. This was really fun. I feel like we're going to talk again.
Absolutely. So tell me, what is the best place for people to find you?
Oh, well, if they're on any of the social
Yeah.
platforms, I'm
Yeah.
Instagram, Angela Rakis. It's not my business name. I just kept my name, Angrakis at
Okay.
Instagram. I have
Great.
a business Facebook page, Favorite Daughter LLC. I'm on LinkedIn as myself and my business.
Awesome.
Any of those,
Yeah, that's great. Well, we
find
will
me.
link all of those in the bio so people
Yeah.
can check it out and find you there. And you guys can always find me at Suburban Warrior on Instagram. And I am also Chrissy Pfeiffer on LinkedIn. But I want to again thank you so much for being here. And guys, we hope that you'll join us again next week to hear another awesome warrior story with another amazing suburban warrior to share. So see you guys on next week. Thanks, Angela.